Hello, I'm Humphrey Hawksley. This is number 0841, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0841. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Joey Spiotto, who is the author and illustrator of Klingon Next Door, Off Duty the Warrior's Way. When he was thinking about the Klingon Next Door, why wasn't he thinking of Worf?
When I think of Klingons, I don't think of Worf. Worf to me is a Starfleet officer. He's also a Klingon, but he's got that duality in him. I really just kind of wanted to take a nondescript Klingon, maybe someone you would never see as a focus of an episode, someone in the background, someone who doesn't aspire to do much, just get through their day, get their time off, and go relax on a beach on Risa or something.
Wayne Elliott is an entrepreneur, environmental pioneer, and a health advocate. He spent a lifetime heading the largest shipping recycler in North America. Would he suggest people going into the business today?
It's a difficult business. It's a very dangerous business. You deal with all the nasty chemical metals, mercury, cadmium, lead. Asbestos being the biggest and costliest with old ships. It was outlawed back in 1972, I think, but we still see it on almost every ship because we don't get new ships to recycle. It's older vessels. The whole business is a gamble. If the price of scrap is high enough, you make money. If it's not high enough, you lose money. There's no shortcuts, and you have to spend a lot of money right up front. So I wouldn't suggest anybody go into the business.
Science writer Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy, is back to talk about how water may have been brought to our planet by comets based on the findings in the Devil Comet.
When you hold that glass of water in front of you, you might actually owe a debt to a comet. This is reaffirming this finding in this comet, which, by the way, called Devil Comet because it has these two very distinct dust and gas tails. But what's intriguing to astronomers is that it has the same chemical fingerprint for water exactly as what we find here on Earth. So this is kind of pushing the argument in favor of comets as being the deliverers of water to our planet.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, a morning shower thought, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest slater, the person who told you this was show number 0841, was Humphrey Hawksley, a BBC foreign correspondent and the author of the thriller novels of the Rake Ozena series, featuring titles including Man on Ice, Man on Fire, Man on Edge, and Ice Islands. He was also a guest back on show number 0836, and you can go and listen to that. Thank you very much, Humphrey, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. Let's start off this week with squirrels.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Two San Rafael, California residents required emergency medical treatment after separate squirrel attacks in the same neighborhood. Joan Heblack described how the animal unexpectedly pounced. She said,
This clomped onto my leg and it was just hanging on. His tail was flying up here. And I was like, get off me. And I kind of didn't want to touch it.
The squirrel's claws cut deep enough to send her to hospital. Meanwhile, Isabel Campoy and her niece encountered a similar incident while walking in the area.
This is beautiful. Now it's following us until she almost killed me.
Campoy went on to say,
The squirrel went to the floor, and from the floor tried to jump to my face, which I tried to protect my face from, and then my arm was completely overcome by the squirrel. Finally, it jumped off, and by then I was full of blood, and I ran to the emergency room.
Neighbors posted warning flyers about the very mean squirrel. They reportedly attacked more than 5 people. By the way, do you know that squirrels can find food beneath a foot of snow?
Yeah, but what's that got to do with anything?
Wow, that is an aggressive squirrel.
Well, I think there's plenty dirty work afoot around here.
Never mind my foot. Just get off my leg. The Washington State Patrol, or WSP, says that a suspect was found in a large kitchen appliance after he ran from police. On August 31st, they responded to a near crash not too far from U.S. Highway 101. Police say the driver of the car ran, forcing them to use other ways to track him. K-9 units, with the help of a drone, were able to track down the suspect. The suspect was found inside an unplugged refrigerator. Wow. Luckily for the police, the fridge was unplugged. Otherwise, it would have been a cold case. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, according to Tampa, Florida police, a wrong-way driver was stopped on Interstate 4 in the wee hours of the morning after narrowly missing a serious collision with a police car and putting multiple other people in danger. Officers said they received a report just after 2:30 a.m. on September the 12th of a driver heading the wrong way in the eastbound lanes of I-4. They quickly found a silver Toyota Camry traveling westbound in the inside eastbound lane at around 60 miles per hour. Tampa police tried to stop the driver, identified as 24-year-old Christian Beal, but said Beal refused to pull over. She sideswiped a marked police car and continued to drive the wrong way on the interstate. Officers enlisted help from the Florida Highway Patrol and were able to stop the Camry. How drunk was she? She was so drunk that not only did she drive the wrong way, she thought her husband was driving, and she was alone in the car. Here's audio from police body cam.
My husband's driving me home. It's just really
What do you mean? You were driving home.
No, he's driving us home.
You were just driving.
No. I was driving. I was like I was in the passenger seat.
Is there anyone else in that car?
No, yeah.
Yeah, there's no one else in the car.
No, okay, maybe not that specific clear, but there was like me and my husband were in one car.
Wow, that's drunk. According to the police department, her breath alcohol content was measured at .199 and .202, both more than double the legal limit of 0.08. Beal was arrested and charged with DUI, aggravated fleeing to elude, and fleeing to elude at high speed. I'm guessing she thought she was arguing with her husband in the car. She's probably still arguing with him. Wait a minute. Does she even have a husband? Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program, shall we? Joey Spiotto is a New York Times best-selling illustrator and the author of several books. His latest one is right up my alley. It's called Klingon Next Door, Off-Duty: The Warrior's Way, and it aims to show the lighter side of Star Trek's most aggressive beings when they're not piloting their birds of prey. Joey joins us from Southern California via Riverside.com. Hi, Joey.
Kapla! Thank you for having me.
Oh, wow. Thanks for being on the program with us. Now, the idea of this book, how did it come to light?
So I am a lifelong Star Trek fan. My wife and I love Star Trek dearly. We watch it almost every day. Almost.
Wow.
And several years ago, at this point, oh my gosh, a decade ago, I did a book for a publisher called Titan Books. They do a lot of licensed projects. And I did a book with them called Alien Next Door. They had seen my work at a convention and some galleries that I had shown my illustration work through. And there was an editor there who reached out to me and they wanted to work with me on an alien book. And so I came up with this idea of, aliens are inherently these scary, terrifying creatures. Well, what do they do on their day off when they're not being scary and terrifying? Like what kind of things can they get up to? And they wanted a humorous book. So I put together like 80 or so pages of ideas for what does an alien do on its day off. And the book did extremely well. And I did another book with them based on the show Firefly, which I was also a big fan of. And then recently they came back to me and they asked if I would be interested in doing something similar with Star Trek. And of course, I had to say yes. Yeah, yes. I love Star Trek. Yes. And so immediately I thought, like, Klingons are not very friendly. They're not the friendliest bunch, maybe. And it would be fun to see a Klingon, what the Klingon warrior gets up to when he's not on duty. And so, following in the footsteps of the alien next door, I produced Klingon Next Door.
What was your inspiration? And before you answer that question, what was your inspiration beyond Worf?
Oh, great. Actually, interestingly, I didn't really consider Worf. Now, don't read too much into this.
Okay.
When I think of Klingons, I don't think of Worf. Worf to me is a Starfleet officer. He's also a Klingon, but he's got that duality in him, of course, and you see it played out through The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. But I really wanted to focus on a Klingon warrior, the one with the armor, not a Starfleet uniform, and the bird of prey, and kind of more so of the Klingon warrior that you see depicted sometimes as side characters. Now, of course, there's main, Gowron and all of the Klingon hierarchy and all that. But yeah, I really just kind of wanted to take a nondescript Klingon, maybe someone you would never see as a focus of an episode, someone in the background, and just someone who doesn't aspire to do much, just get through their day, get their time off, and go relax on a beach on Risa or something.
Just the idea that Klingons have days off is
Yes.
foreign to me.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the whole funny part is like, does a Klingon take a day off? No, they are warriors. They're always on. They don't take a day off. But what if they did? What would they do?
As an illustrator, do you spend your time looking at the page and laughing out loud? Because these things, I mean, I'm looking at some of the drawings that you have done, and they're hysterical. And I can't imagine it not being hysterical as you're drawing them.
So sometimes, yes. Not to toot my own horn, I don't do that often. But typically, with a book like this, I will write down a list. My goal is to get to 100 ideas. If just in the writing, a brief description. So, I'll take a Word document 1 through 100, and I'll just start coming up with ideas. And some of them not great ideas. Some of them funny ideas. Some of them perfect for the book. Some of them maybe not so much. But just get them all out there, and then I whittle it down. But I do laugh at some of them, even just in the words phrase, and then I can kind of picture how I think it should look. One in particular. Have you had a chance to look through the book?
No, I have not had the. I've seen.
Okay, there's one. There's one. There's one panel that made me laugh, and it is the Klingon is getting beamed aboard. The teleporter machine, but he's on the toilet. And and he's clearly embarrassed by being brought back together molecule by molecule on the pad while sitting on a toilet. And it's so dumb, but it made me laugh so hard. I thought it was so funny.
I mean, that's something that, and by the way, you never saw a toilet on Star Trek.
Ever, not once.
And that's something that is truly mundane. And I was going to bring up the mundane aspect of Klingon life. I'm looking right now at the Klingon doing laundry.
Yeah. Well, I kind of pick all of the boring stuff that I do throughout my day. Uh, just kind of, well, how do you make this fun? Is it funny if a Klingon does it? Yeah, Klingon doing laundry in his full garb or maybe in his underwear or something. That's pretty funny.
And right on the cover of the book, there's a Klingon barbecuing.
Yes, yeah. So he's barbecuing some sausages. I feel like Klingons would love to grill some dogs. Interestingly enough, so he's wearing an apron that says "Kiss the Cook," and the cook is spelled in sort of Klingon-esque Q apostrophe OOK. And I had another phrase on there. The publisher picked that image for the cover. And I went back and forth with them and I said, so a little bit of a backstory to this. So there's no words in the book. The book is all images. Each page is its own vignetted image of Klingon on his day off. But within that, there's some Klingon language written on signage or, whatever. And I had a bunch of questions about the Klingon language, how words are spelled or how it would be used. And so I had a contact at CBS through the publisher. So I sent them a list of questions, Klingon questions. It took them a couple of days to get back to me, and they said, "You know what? We actually don't know, but we would be happy to put you in touch with Mark Okrand." And immediately I knew, are you familiar with his name, Mark Okrand?
The creator of the Klingon language?
The creator of the Klingon language. And I knew him. I knew I knew his name. So when his email came through, I thought, my goodness, am I going to get to correspond with the creator of the Klingon language? And that was a dream come true. So I was very excited. So I sent him all my questions, and he very graciously, kindly, and thoroughly responded to all of my nerdy Klingon questions. Just such a gracious, wonderful human who knows this stuff deeply. And so I asked him about the cover where it says "Kiss the Cook," and he said, well, he sent me a really nice response about how it wouldn't be phrased or spelled that way and why, and it all went into depth. And so I reached out to the editor and I said, I don't know if you know this, but Trekkies and Trekkers are a very particular bunch of people, as I'm one of them, where if something is not right, well, you're going to get called out for it. So there's a little disclaimer in the back of the book about the correct usage of the Klingon language and "Kiss the Cook" and how it wouldn't be used, and Mark helped out with that, and it was very, very wonderful. But yeah, on the cover he's grilling dogs.
You mentioned earlier a Klingon in their underpants, and I'm going back to the Klingon doing laundry and the fact that
Uh-huh.
he's wearing underwear that has hearts on it.
Very un-warrior like.
Oh gosh, that makes me laugh so loud, so loud.
Very un-warrior like.
Now that the book is out, dare I say, have you sent it to Michael Dorn?
You know what I did? I gave him a copy at the Star Trek convention. He was very appreciative, very nice. And of course, he was busy. There was a lot of people there in line to meet him. But I was able to get him one and thank him for his work. I had not met him before. Years ago, my wife and I went to the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas. That show is really unique. I do a lot of conventions. People that you want to see are very unapproachable at conventions because they're not walking around, they're not hanging out. You wait in line at a table at the Star Trek convention in Vegas. They're just hanging out. They're walking around the show floor. You can go up to typically anywhere on the floor and just start having a conversation. And interestingly, most people don't they just sort of leave these actors alone and then go wait in line to meet them at their thing. From my perspective, of course, they may have a different opinion on that, but but yeah, it just blew my mind at the Star Trek convention. You can just kind of walk up to someone, strike up a conversation. So yeah, I briefly had a chance to hand one off to Michael Doran, which was very cool for me.
I think beyond the book, by the way, you should have a cottage industry talking about Klingons and drawing Klingons. I can see calendars coming out, follow-up books coming out about the Klingon next door. I think this is just marvelous.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a very, very fun project for me. And as a fan of making kind of mundane stuff funny and a fan of Star Trek, it was sort of the perfect combination for me. I loved working on it. And CBS was really great. They loved, everything I turned in. They just were big fans of, and the publisher was great to work with. So yeah, it was an awesome project. I'd love to do more.
I know before we started chatting officially on the air here that we talked about Star Trek and our mutual love for Star Trek, and we love the animated versions of Star Trek. Uh, do you wish and hope that another animated version of Star Trek can take place, and if so, that you could be part of it?
Oh my goodness. I mean, yes. Yes. Animated Star Trek is really something special. We were talking, about our love for Lower Decks and Prodigy. I think Star Trek Prodigy and Lower Decks could not be tonally more different shows, but both offer something really special and really unique for their respective audience. And the more Star Trek, the better, animated or otherwise. But yes, if I were to be involved with a Star Trek show, animated would be the way to go. 100%. Maybe a Klingon animated series.
Absolutely. Well, again, congratulations on the book. It's called Klingon Next Door, Off Duty, The Warrior Way. Joey, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Joey Spiotto, illustrator and author of Klingon Next Door, Off Duty, The Warrior's Way. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0841, and you'll find the link to Joey's website, plus links to either amazon.com or amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
I used to run a dating service for chickens, but I was struggling to make hens meet.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffile program.
I'm standing with you for Canada. Hi there, this is Cynthia Dale. I've played many roles, but the small role I'm playing now, buying Canadian products, supporting Canadian businesses, protecting Canadian jobs. I've never been prouder of a role in my life. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada, for Canada.
You're experiencing the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. Sit back, relax, let it rattle around between your ears, tickling your cerebellum, and enjoy.
And still to come on the program, we will talk to entrepreneur, environmental pioneer, and health advocate Wayne Elliott. Plus, Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy, is back on the program to talk about, among other things, the Devil Comet. Plus, we also have a morning shower thought, an idiot of the day, and lots more in Stuff File news right here, right now. 35-year-old Donald Harper Jr. of South Carolina received 15 additional years in prison after recently pleading guilty to throwing bodily fluids at a correctional officer at McCormick Correctional Institution. The attack occurred way back on January 11th while the officer delivered meals to Harper's dormitory. Court records show Harper threw a cup of diarrhea directly into the officer's face, striking his mouth and eyes. The officer required immediate medical treatment and ongoing monitoring for potential infectious disease exposure. Harper's projected release date changed from 2036, so he wasn't getting out anytime soon anyway, to 2051. He was previously convicted of voluntary manslaughter in 2015 for killing a professor, receiving 24 years. So, this is basically a judicial system saying, we're not taking any of your crap. Yeah. In Georgia, DeKalb County Police arrested Kaylin Watley on September the 16th for allegedly stealing more than 90 manhole covers from county streets this month. Watley faces 8 counts of theft of government property, with additional charges expected. Police say 5 separate incidents since September the 2nd involve the theft of at least 91 DeKalb County Public Works manhole covers. The case broke when a Rockdale County witness recorded 2 men removing manhole covers and loading them into a 2020 Nissan Kick. Deputies traced the vehicle's owner, connected him to other thefts, and arrested Watley during a traffic stop in DeKalb County. Wow, a manhole cover thief. Either he was stealing them for the metal, or he was just a connoisseur. Yeah, I said it. Meanwhile, Hellman's Spain has offered to pay repair costs for Cafeteria Las Postas in Sevilla after a customer set the restaurant on fire because staff had no mayonnaise packets. The August 21st incident began when a man requested condiments for his sandwich but was told there weren't any available. He left to buy gasoline from a nearby station, returned, and doused the counter with fuel before igniting it. Security footage showed customers and employees fleeing as flames erupted. Damage estimates range between 7 and 10,000 euros. Hellman's Spain responded on Instagram, "Let us take care of the repairs and make sure your sandwiches never run out of mayonnaise again." Bystanders detained the arsonist until police arrived.
So bring out the Hellmans and bring out the best.
Well, that jingle might work for food, but clearly it doesn't work for people. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, in an impromptu interview, President Donald Trump was asked if it was illegal to shoot Venezuelan boats out of the water for allegedly smuggling drugs. This was his response.
So what's illegal are the drugs that were on the boat and the drugs that are being sent into our country and the fact that 300 million people died last year from drugs. That's what's illegal.
The London Independent newspaper gently pointed out that in 2024, across the entire world population and for all causes of death, around 62 million people died. The London newspaper just pointed out the facts, leaving it to someone else to point out that the entire population of the U.S. is 342.5 million people, including immigrants. Could the President of the United States be a math genius?
Well, by no stretch of my imagination do I believe you've all come here to hear me lecture, or rather to ascertain the identity of the mystery math magician.
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program, shall we? Wayne Elliott is an entrepreneur, environmental pioneer, and a health advocate. He's also the subject in a book by Jim Beach called The Real Environmentalists: How Wayne Elliott and Other Capitalists Will Save the World. Wayne joins us from Ontario via riverside.com. Hi, Wayne.
Hello, Peter.
Thanks for being on the program with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
The thing that I noticed is the fact that, you ran the largest ISO-certified ship recycler in North America. And when you think of ship recycling, that's not necessarily something that is environmentally friendly. But you have done that.
Yeah, we've been at it longer than anyone in the world. We're the oldest active the world's oldest active shipbreaker and the first ISO certified by, I think, 12 years. There aren't many shipbreakers in North America, Peter. There are full-time production yards. I believe there are 6. 5 of those are in the United States, down in Brownsville, Texas, and Mobile, Alabama.
Were you someone who was always environmentally conscious, or did the business that you were in make you so?
A little of both, Peter. My dad worked for a family and self-taught, opened a shipbreaking yard in Hamilton, Ontario in 1959. And a couple of times I saw how they did it then, which was to light the accommodation sections, the forward end of the ship, on fire and burn out the wood and the carpet and anything else that wasn't steel and metal. I'll always remember the smell. The other thing I saw a number of times in those days with my dad as a child was burning insulated copper wire on a big screen with straw underneath it, and I'll never forget the taste in my throat. I guess, it was probably that unpleasantness that made me first aware that I don't like this. I didn't like the smell, and I'll never forget a Santa Claus parade when I was 4 or 5 years old. And just as Santa's float is coming up Ottawa Street in Hamilton, I was with my aunt. Dofasco cleaned its boiler stack and blew a giant cloud of black smoke right above Santa Claus. I can see that like it was yesterday, and that's got to be 65 years ago at least. So those kinds of things,
When you first got into the business, you mentioned some of the things that were taking place in the business as you got into it. When you decided to make changes, did you meet any resistance from either your peers or competitors as to what you were planning to do?
No, and it took a while too. I had no money really behind me, and so it was a scuffle from the start. But we always wanted to be, my dad always preached to us, be the best of whatever you are. It doesn't matter what you choose to do for a living, but try and be the best at it always, and always give it your best. So having these things in my head from a small kid, and then of course learning much more and about pollution and the Environmental Protection Act in Canada and the United States was enacted in 1970, and then there were rules. There really were no rules before that. Of course, we lived with the carnage from that, and we will for many years still. Love Canal and the New York area, and some of the, factories would just put a pipe into the lake or the ocean, and geez, there it is, it's gone. Well, it's not gone. Over time, Lake Erie, you could darn near walk across it when I was a kid. It was so polluted, and thanks to Niagara Falls, it got cleaned out, and Lake Ontario will take hundreds and hundreds of years to clean itself up. So, yeah, it was once I learned about it, I became more and more passionate. We're only here for a short time, and I have four sons and a stepson, and I've got 8 grandkids, and of course I'm concerned about them. And I think it's kind of criminal to do otherwise, and of course today some of that stuff is criminal. If you're willfully polluting, it is a crime.
I mentioned in the introduction that you're the subject of a book by Jim Beach, which is called The Real Environmentalists: How Wayne Elliott and Other Capitalists Will Save the World. How did the two of you come together to be, in your case, the subject of his book?
I went on his show called School for Startups, and he had me as a guest 2 or 3 times. And then he asked to have me on every week for a year. And it was largely, those conversations that I believe he used to write the book. I didn't do what was fashionable for years, and bigger companies like Phillip Environmental were doing it, was taking the fees, taking the money, and stockpiling the waste. I couldn't take that chance. I had very little money to start with, so I sure couldn't afford to get in trouble or build myself a big negative value pile of waste. So we never did that. And of course, it held us up financially for years, really. I could have done better. I could have done that. I'm glad I didn't. I'm not sorry that I didn't. It's not the right thing to do. If you don't have a process, you shouldn't accept the waste. That's what went on. And of course, Phillips went bankrupt for hundreds of millions of dollars. And so we never played that game of stockpiling waste.
Are more and more companies today doing what you were basically a pioneer of?
The shipbreaking, you mean?
Well,
No.
not only the ship breaking, but just the idea of doing it environmentally friendly.
Well, the rules started to come into effect. Like, for example, the Basel Convention, I was the unpaid advisor to Canada's member to the Basel Convention. Federal Natural Resources man named Clapham was his last name. But the Basel Convention had no enforcement teeth. And they had like one inspector between China and India. The net result is it was all but useless. Then the Hong Kong Convention came along, and I was the unpaid advisor to Canada's member to the Hong Kong Convention. I really only accomplished one thing, and that was that any heavy metals anywhere on the ship, including as part of a brass valve, the owner would have to identify, and well, that was just a big waste and was going to be a big waste of money for everybody because red brass, for example, doesn't leach the lead. It's a very valuable metal, and shipbreakers and scrap metal people know what to do with it. So I did manage to have that help change it. But I wanted them also to focus on dead ship towing, which is the riskiest part of shipbreaking in real terms. They didn't do that. But the Hong Kong Convention now and the EU have really started to change things where yards won't get approved unless they're compliant with these things. So the whole idea, of course, is not to pollute. It's a difficult business. It's a very dangerous business. You deal with all the nasty chemical metals, mercury, cadmium, lead, PCBs, asbestos. Asbestos being the biggest and costliest with old ships. It was outlawed back in 1972, I think, but we still see it on almost every ship, because we don't get new ships to recycle. It's older vessels, including the Navy vessels. The whole business is a gamble. If the price of scrap is high enough, you make money. If it's not high enough, you lose money. There's no shortcuts. And you have to spend a lot of money right up front with the oil, all the hydrocarbons, oily water, detergent, wash the tanks, abate the asbestos. All of that has to be done before you get a pound of metal. So I wouldn't suggest anybody go into the business. Actually, Peter, luckily we've been more profitable in years that we were profitable than money we lost in years that we lost money. Very tough business. That's why there's only 6 people in North America, and of course there's 20 odd in Turkey and 40 odd in Alang, India, and I think 27 in Bangladesh. And they're all polluting the world and harming workers.
Again, in Jim Beach's title, the subtitle of the book is How Wayne Elliott and Other Capitalists Will Save the World. Do you agree with the fact that it will be capitalists that will have to save the world?
Well, I don't disagree with it because everything costs money, whether you fail or succeed in the end. It still costs money to try it, to get there, to do whatever you're doing. There has been the beauty of the ISO program, the ISO certification program, is it's a commitment. It's an individual thing. It's not, we don't all have the same ISO program. In fact, we all have different ones because it's tailored to your own business, the risks, and all the rest of it. It's very intensive, and it's a commitment to continuous improvement. We got to a point where in our annual audits with outside auditors, there was so little wrong, even to find a minor variance. We're now doing things like looking at, okay, what can we do so that tow motor moves less number of feet in a day? How can we cut down on its distance? How can we do that with our trucks, cranes, and so forth? Because it's all emissions. When an engine's running, there's emissions. We've gone mostly to giant hydraulic shears that are on giant excavators, like a big pair of scissors, and that's eliminated 90% of emissions from torch cutting. So we use these very large shears, and that's pretty common as far as I know, certainly in the yards in the United States and Canada, not so much in Asia. Labor's too cheap there to justify that kind of equipment.
You have definitely been a pioneer, not only in the ship recycling business, but also in the environmental business. And up until you, it doesn't seem like those two things went together. So kudos to you for having the forethought to do the things in the way that you did them.
Well, thank you for that. What I'm proudest of, Peter, was the most difficult business by far was the battery recycling business. There was no legislation. If it wasn't for the few green thinking companies 40 years ago, I certainly would have failed. In fact, I lost money for 20 years in a row. I was too soon. The clock didn't tick around fast enough environmentally for the way I thought it would. So after 20 years of losing money, supported by our other business, we developed a process to recycle alkaline batteries, consumer batteries, the non-rechargeables. The reason I went after those is there's nothing very valuable in them, so there was no big shots after it. And they're the biggest tonnage. 80 to 85% of all small consumer batteries are alkaline. And I like the idea of full truckloads and so forth, good heavy materials. And we developed a process in-house that we create what we call black mass, which is a micronutrient additive with 4 of the 8 micronutrients, iron, potassium, zinc, and manganese. That's 4 of the 8. And our black mass is used in the United States to grow all the corn for ethanol. And with 30 pounds of our black mass on an acre, they get 20 extra bushels of corn. And that black mass is 100% from alkaline battery contents that have been stabilized and neutralized. It isn't our process to adhere it to the fertilizer. Our partners in the U.S. in the fertilizer business did that. Involves acid, and I don't know their process, to be honest, but 30 pounds of our black mass on an acre generated 20 extra bushels of corn. I'm very proud of that.
Again, you should be, and congratulations on all that you've done. And thank you very, very much, Wayne, for taking the time to be on our program.
Well, thank you, Peter. It's my pleasure.
Entrepreneur Wayne Elliott. The subject of the Jim Beach book called The Real Environmentalists, How Wayne Elliott and Other Capitalists Will Save the World. You know, there is so much to talk about with Wayne that this barely covered the surface. For instance, among his businesses, he's the owner of Strauss Naturals, which is Canada's largest natural health products company. By the way, you can go to our website at thestuffwile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0841, and you'll find a link to Wayne's company website, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order Jim Beach's book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
If a pig loses its voice, does it become disgruntled?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Coming to you from Canada, a place where fighting is frowned upon, unless it's on an ice rink. This is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. Now, the Stuff File presents Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy. It's radio that's out of this world.
Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy, is a member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada and the author of National Geographic's Backyard Guide to the Night Sky, and also National Geographic's Stargazer's Atlas, the Ultimate Guide to the Night Sky. And Andrew, our third rock from the sun mostly consists of water, and now we're learning that something called a devil comet contains the strongest evidence yet that comets delivered water to Earth.
That's right. So this is a really amazing finding that acts kind of like a powerful reminder that when you hold that glass of water in front of you, you might actually owe a debt to a comet. That's what I think is so fascinating here is that this is reaffirming this finding in this comet, which, by the way, called Devil Comet because it has these two very distinct dust and gas tails that kind of emanate from the head of the comet. So it looks kind of intriguing to the eye. But what's intriguing to astronomers is that it has the same chemical fingerprint for water exactly as what we find here on Earth. So this is kind of pushing the argument in favor of comets as being the deliverers of water to our planet. So one theory is that originally when our planet was formed billions of years ago, ancient Earth did not have maybe very much water to it. And all this water that we're seeing, over 70% of our planet covered with water, originates perhaps through comets that bombarded our planet in ancient times, billions of years ago. And we do know from other evidence elsewhere in the solar system that there was this, what we call the era of bombardment, when comets were flying all over the place in the solar system and smacking into all these different planets. And Earth might have been in the crosshair for a few of these. And we know that comets are basically giant ice reservoirs, water ice reservoirs. Some of them are many kilometers wide. And so it would be a very convenient way of delivering a lot of the water here on our planet. It's basically called the cometary delivery theory. This theory, I think, got a very big boost from all the data coming in from this Devil Comet.
Now, we are considered what's known as a Goldilocks planet, that we're not too far from the sun and we're not too close to the sun. So is that the reason why we developed the water that we have and that other planets haven't really developed that water? Or is the fact that because planets are closer to the sun, it evaporates, and further from the sun, it turns to ice?
Well, I think the mystery is actually deeper than that, because when we talk about the Goldilocks zone in astronomy, it refers to the placement of the planet, the orbital distance from its parent star, or the sun in our case, is really inside the zone where water, H2O, can exist in liquid form on the surface of the planet. So it's not too hot, not too cold. It doesn't really refer to the idea of actually having water on the planet. In fact, if we look at Mars, which is really on the edge of this Goldilocks zone, it's quite a bit colder. It does not have any water, liquid water on its surface. We don't find any. Because the atmosphere is just way too thin to hold water. But we do find water in frozen form underground. We think there are large reservoirs of H2O underneath the Martian soil. If you dig deep enough, just a few meters, there could be even aquifers. Even liquid water may exist there. So I think what we're talking about with this comet is probably that because we are positioned exactly on that sweet spot away from the sun, where the temperatures are just perfect, that when those comets bombarded our planet and brought that ice, water ice, they melted upon arriving here, and they formed all the oceans and lakes that we see today.
We are considered one of the only places with flowing water, but I also understand that there is an asteroid that scientists find evidence of flowing water on the ancient parent of this asteroid.
Yeah, so basically when we're talking about asteroids in general, we do find that many of them have evidence of liquid water having flowed maybe on a part of it, because some of these asteroids are actually most likely parts of much larger ancient asteroids that have broken up. And this new finding of flowing water on asteroid evidence shows that the parent asteroid that it probably got carved off of had flowing water. At least that's what the evidence is. And this is what astronomers are saying in their findings. It's forcing us to rethink the starting conditions for various planets, including our own, how water may have formed or flowed in our ancient history. So the discovery that water existed in liquid form, here we're talking 1 billion years after the parent body of the name of this asteroid, by the way, is Ryugu, came from the study of rock samples that were collected by the Japanese Hayabusa 2 probe back in 2019. It returned to Earth in 2020. Scientists were able to look at these samples in the laboratory. You can think of it like kind of like a fossil record of some unspoiled material from basically way back at the time when all the planets were just forming. So in the earliest moments of our solar system's history, it looks like from the samples that they collected from this asteroid, there was water activity, but it probably only lasted in the parent asteroid that we're talking about at the very earlier stages of the evolution of our solar system. And then it sort of probably evaporated or just disappeared. So it's just an interesting point. It's this chemical fingerprint again of water, and it changes how we think maybe the long-term fate of water on asteroids really are, telling us that water was probably around there for quite a bit of time and just didn't disappear as fast as we have been thinking.
You know, when we talk about comets and we talk about asteroids, that I have to bring up Bennu. So from that perspective, Bennu contains stardust, apparently, that it's older than the solar system.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Bennu, of course, your favorite topic, this asteroid that is has a small chance, less than 1 in 3,000 chance of impacting the Earth in over a century from now. So Peter, you can breathe a sigh of relief with that. We're not in any immediate danger. But what's interesting is that NASA's sample return mission to the asteroid Bennu, which was done by the OSIRIS-REx mission, found that some of its stardust that they collected there really are older than all the planets and even the sun itself. These grains that they're analyzing in the lab that have been returned from this asteroid predate our sun. That is, we estimate, is 4.6 billion years old. They're basically relics, we think, of ancient stars and dust clouds that probably were hanging around at the very same time that our solar system was forming. And it was incorporated into all the stuff that makes up our solar system. So you can really think of Bennu as a time capsule that's carrying some of the most primordial material in this part of the Milky Way. It's just amazing that, some of the scientists are even thinking that these grains were probably formed inside very ancient stars predating our sun, like I said, that exploded probably in a supernova explosion long before our sun ever existed. It's really amazing to think.
Let me go back a little bit to what we were talking about initially, and that was the Devil Comet. As you said, the comets of the olden days bombarded all of the planets. So is there something similar about the makeup of the planets because of those comets? Or are they still very different?
They are different in some senses because some of these planets, and we're still trying to understand this. You have to remember, we're really in the earliest stages of our understanding the evolution of planetary systems. And we want to know this, by the way, Peter, because it's not just relevant to our story here on Earth. How do we come here? How did our planet form and our neighboring planets? But it also has an impact on our understanding of generally how planetary systems form in the universe. So when we're searching so much for Earth 2.0, that's kind of like the holy grail in planetary astronomy right now. We're finding, cataloging all these planets around other stars where we're trying to understand is there a commonality in how planetary systems are formed. So what we're realizing is that there is like a common kind of chemical DNA that exists in planets that they share. So in this case, we're talking about these star dusts being found in an asteroid here in our solar system that probably was formed in another planetary system, that where the parent star just literally exploded, blew up everything, probably all its planets and everything, and scattered those remnants out into the Milky Way, and then they eventually coalesced, were drawn into what made up all our planets, the Earth and everything else, including, Bennu, it has these kind of remnants. We do share this commonality. There's a lot of chemicals and metals, for heavy metals, for instance, that are shared amongst many of the solar system family members. Planets, comets, asteroids, they share this common heritage.
Excellent. Well, there's so much more that we can talk about, including one of the questions that came in from a Patreon subscriber. Hi, Shell in Winnipeg, but we don't have time to get to it here on the regular show. So maybe we should go over to Patreon and answer Shell's question amongst other questions that we also have. So are you keen?
Oh, you bet. Let's continue the fun, Peter.
Okay.
Clear skies.
Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0841, and you'll find links to Andrew's site to get your own personal autographed copy of his books. Patreon subscribers, you can hear more of Andrew as a Patreon reward extra, where we'll discuss Interstellar Invader Comet 31 Atlas, a fleet of helicopters on Mars, how in death Einstein still helps the Hubble telescope, and more. Just go to our Patreon page, and if you're not already a member, become one of the select patrons of the show. Visit patreon.com/The Stuff File Program. You're listening to The Stuff File Program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
The San Francisco police responded to a bank robbery, authorities say, after swiftly identifying and apprehending 62-year-old Valentino Luchin. They charged him with robbery, attempted robbery, and second-degree robbery. The 3 charges weren't for just one robbery. He's accused of hitting a total of 3 San Francisco banks that day. But that's not all. In 2018, Luchin, a chef, was arrested for robbing a bank in nearby Orinda. Luchin turned to the dark side after his restaurant, Ottavio, closed, leaving him in desperation. That's what he told the East Bay Times at the time. Regarding the 2018 robbery, Luchin told that newspaper, "I thought it was a good plan, but it was not." So the question has to be asked, why? Oh, why? When you robbed a bank in 2018 because your restaurant was failing, you got caught, and you admitted that it was a bad idea, would you then decide this year to rob 3 banks in one day, thinking you could get away with it? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File Program, number 0841. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestuffile.com. And once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0841. Email me at peter@thestuffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including kdxradio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. I'm your humble announcer, Ben Patrick Johnson. Don't let Peter fool you. This program will be nothing without me. What you hear in the rest of the show isn't even Peter's real voice. It's all special effects. His actual voice has officially been deemed as torture by the Geneva Convention.